that. The best thing to do would be to take them off. Let me just do that because they were twisted. And then I'll get them on later. Okay, should I start? I mean, I advance it that way. Okay. Welcome, and it's a pleasure to see you, and welcome to those of you who are Deborah Pepler, and I am stepping into the role of interim director of the Center for Indigenous Knowledges and Languages. And I want to acknowledge right away that I'm standing in a place where I don't belong. I am a settler, and as a settler, I don't belong in a leadership position within an Indigenous research context or any context for that matter. But I have spent over 20 years doing research with Indigenous communities, starting with Susan Dion, who's now the Associate Vice President of Indigenous Initiative. Susan and I met in 2001 when she came to York and started a friendship and a collaboration. So I know how she has taught me, as many others have, how to walk alongside. And so I thought I was presenting, and I'm going to just use this as a way of locating myself a bit, because we've done community engaged research for over 20 years with Indigenous communities and had a large project. So I started in 1984 doing embedded scholarship, which means scholarship that's embedded in the context of an organization or a community. And it's a very different type of scholarship because you build the research by through relationships, by building caring, trusting, open communicative relationships. And with those relationships, then you can build a research program. And the one I have built with the Canadian Red Cross focused on their work to prevent violence in Indigenous communities in Canada. We've done research with 11 Indigenous communities that were very eager to create safe environments for their children and youth. When I step into a space, I work very much from Ehrman's sense of ethical space, and an ethical space is one where the power balances are left outside, and you really work to build a respect and attunement for the other. And this was extremely important for our work with Indigenous communities, for my work with the research team with the Red Cross. And I think what I've learned most in the 20 plus years I've done this work is to listen. I'm a listener in any of this kind of embedded scholarship. And I've also learned to be very patient because my timetable, the university's timetables, don't work at the same pace as the work in Indigenous communities. And that's completely understandable given the burdens of colonialism that they're working under for generations. So this is a framework that I very much use as I walk into any kind of community-based research. And the university teaches us, trains us, rewards us for being independent. That's what they teach us. You're the expert. You need to have the voice. You need to be out front. You need to be first author. You need to be the one who's shifting understanding. And that actually doesn't work when you're doing embedded research or engaged research. And so I came into the university with experience in doing this kind of engaged research at a children's mental health center. And I've very much continued and grown into what would be considered an interdependent approach, where you're aligning with others, you're listening a lot to others, you're working to ensure your efforts are moving with others. And so I teach my students this. I think this is incredibly important for any kind of community engaged research. But again, it's not something we're taught in the university, nor is it something that we're rewarded for. You need to be first author on publications, you need to be PI on a grant. And so I just bring this up because it represents the struggle or the move that I've had from being, a student, a grad student, a postdoc, into doing my early embedded research and on for 40 years till today, when I'm very much interdependent. So that what I've learned, mostly from being in community settings or organizations, is that you need this interdependent, humble, relational approach, or you can't do this work. It's that simple. And especially in working with Indigenous communities who are relational, who make space, who, support learning, but are the experts. That's, I think, the other thing. So what we learn from communities really guides us in this respect, in that the solutions have to include culture when you're working with Indigenous communities. Intergenerational involvement is very important. We were interested in understanding the causes of the violence in communities, which is of course pervasive, and are doing a big project on the harms of colonialism. Everything is strength-based rather than deficit-based. So our medical model of things all going wrong and needing fixing doesn't work. And there's community-driven solutions because the knowledge and the solutions and the expertise lie there. So they've, in our work, communities have guided us, and we've co-created with so the communities indicated for us what they needed and didn't need, and that was what they didn't need was just as important. And we've co-created and developed some resources, and I think I'll be later in the term, my Indigenous co-PI, Shelley Cardinal, will be joining me, and we'll talk about the starting place story that we've developed with communities, as well as this Pathways of Our Truth, which is a timeline of the 15 layers of harms of colonialism over the last 500 years. It's a big project. So in speaking about how to get to an award, we've had a SHRC partnership grant throughout the last 10 years. It ran out after 8 years, and we successfully put in a phase 1 grant for another, got through, we started preparing the phase 2 grant and realized we weren't ready. Our partner wasn't ready. And so we pulled the phase 2 and said, well, just do another phase 1. SHRC said we had to go in again. And we just, in December, pulled phase 1. We are absolutely not ready. We've got the scholarship moving forward, but the community connections aren't there. So we can't go forward. And that is what it is. That's what you have to do in terms of this kind of work. If your partners aren't ready, you can't go ahead. And so it's a different way of walking when you do community engaged research, but it has so many rewards, and I've written about that. There's this spark that comes together and ignites creativity as you do this work. So Miigwech, thank you. Merci beaucoup. I'll hand it over. Here's the microphone.
Good morning. Is it going through? Good morning. My name is Shelley Olawe. I am the director at the Harriet Tubman Institute for Research on Africa and its Diaspora. I am really glad that we're having this workshop today, especially since we get to present what we do and how we can help ourselves, our colleagues, in pushing forward our research. So at the Tubman Institute, what do we do here? I like to say that we are the home for interdisciplinary research that has to do with anything that has to do with Africanist diaspora and people of African descent. It's a safe space for people who would want to publish certain things that, you know, maybe you think or you want to talk about certain research that maybe, you know, there's certain things you talk about, especially when you talk about diversity, that gets people uncomfortable. I get to teach that, so I know it's almost like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. Let's pretend this doesn't happen. But at Tubman Institute, especially when it has to do with Afghanistan diaspora, it's a welcome space. Come here, do your research, and we have many ways that we do this. But what it ends up doing is that it helps to build people's work. It helps we create partnerships, or we give opportunities for partnerships that actually help people to advance their careers. Personally, it was when I started at York, one of the best things that someone did to me was introduce me to the Tubman Institute, which helped me to meet people of like minds, where I could give presentations, get feedback, meaningful feedback, in a very safe and warm space. So that was good for me. And I usually encourage a lot of colleagues who are doing research on these issues to join the Tubman Institute. So here we go beyond histories. We talk about like research on histories, history in pre-colonial times, colonial times, present day situations, things that could come out of research that really has to do with Black people around the world. And one of the things that we are very proud of here is that we are actually a bilingual institute for those who want to do their research, whether in French or in English. So first of all, how do we look at maybe research that has been gathered? How do we disseminate information gotten from our research? One is through our Tubman Talks. And so this we have usually on Thursdays from 3 to 4:30. And for that, we even have one this Thursday, a roundtable talk on the restraints, the possibilities and constraints of researching and writing about African women. And again, this is a topic that you necessarily see in very mainstream spaces. So we encourage things like this. And so with the Tubman Talk, it's like giving a presentation at a workshop. You get good feedback that helps you go and fine tune your paper for research. And when that is done, can you move on to the journal, please? Thank you. And so when that is done, we also provide another space for research dissemination, and that's through our journal, the HTI Journal of African and African Diasporic Studies. It's also a bilingual journal. And so here, even though our main target is giving publication opportunities to grad students, we also give it to like new scholars, new academics, and even seasoned professors. It's a space where people can publish on the things that we research on in Tubman. One of the things that we are looking at is not just, you know how when you submitted papers in journals and you get this feedback that makes you depressed for like 10,000 years, and then you know, so now we're looking to, you know, give people constructive feedback for publication that helps them to go back and do the work, not just trash you and then kill your spirit, and then you shelf. If you look at your computer, there are probably a lot of unpublished works that you just got one bad feedback and you just threw it away. No, that's not the goal. It's to encourage more publication. That's what we do. And so we have research clusters. And so in terms of research, we have research clusters at the Tubman Institute that basically covers every kind of research. Could you go back to the clusters, please? Yeah, thank you. So one we have for labor, movement, and mobility, another for expressive culture and belief systems, another politics, economics, and social justice. Then we have a research cluster for theories and methodologies, including oral sources and digital humanities, one for gender and sexualities, another for health and disability, and a final one for science, technology, engineering, and math. And that basically covers a lot of all the faculty that we have here. The research clusters is a place where people, our members would be able to find, people with of like mind and like research that could help what they're working on. And so, yes. And so in doing all of this, one of the things that we usually do for the, like one of, I like to feel like this is being recorded and then I'm going to get flack from every other ORU that does stuff with Black History Month. But I think that we do the best work with Black History Month at York University. I think we do. And I think I can say that. Maybe I'm a bit biased. Who knows? We, although it's the shortest month and it is the coldest month, which is very weird for Black people, but um, we dedicate the month to honoring the history of Black people, the current realities that they experience, and then looking at what potential futures we could build through our research. For this year, we are talking. Last year we talked about Black educators and Black education. This year we will be talking about labor, Black labor in general, labor, the struggles that people have had. And so that we are looking forward to starting next week, actually, when Black History Month starts. So collaboration. And so overall, we do encourage, we have a very rich community and we do encourage partnerships among ourselves. We have partnerships with the Canadian Multicultural Inventors Museum, partnership with the Harriet Tubman Community Organization, with the Jane and Finch Concerned Citizens Organization, with York University Lions, with Network for the Advancement of the Black Communities, and then Afri-Canada Commerce Exchange. We encourage more partnerships. In the last year, we have had a lot of co-workshops with other ORUs in the in the university, and that really I find is it's great for our community, because you would realize that a lot of one of the things we've realized is that a lot of struggles that people of African descent have had to go through isn't just unique to people of African descent. It's let's say colonialism. It wasn't only Africa that was colonized. Every other person has their experience. Indigenous studies, Asian studies. We've had these collaborations as a result. So it's almost like being unified in our struggles. And so we've encouraged more and more of that, actually. And we also create a space where we can actually have more partnership among our researchers and our scholars. We create a space where we encourage research by offering a lot of in-kind support for people who are applying for grants. And I won't delve too much into that because Rebecca would break that down some more. But we help people with grant applications, with how to conduct their research, how to spread, like survey, for example, sharing of the survey. We recently had a in our newsletter, which comes out every Friday. We've had some grad students survey being advertised there so that it reaches a wider audience. So we actually encourage and try to push for more research as an institute, and to help not just the institute as well, because a lot of these things we need to know in general. And so these are the things and more that we have been working on at the Tubman Institute. And I would take a step back and can you go there?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, try not to rustle it too much. All right. Hi, everyone. I don't think I need the full 10 minutes, I'm Rebecca Seward-Langdon. I'm the coordinator at the Harriet Tubman Institute. So I will discuss how folks can be supported at Tubman, but also other ORUs. There are many, Tubman has many members that are, who are members of SIRLAC as well, CIKL as well. So to an extent, this can be extended to other ORUs as well. So the primary thing that Tubman is great for is the space. Thank you. This space that we are able to provide for researchers, for students and faculties, and also community members. As you can see the room here, folks online, we might have to zoom out the room, but we're in the resource room at the Harriet Tubman Institute in York Lanes, which is a meeting space. It can be changed around for boardroom style, or like we have now, a roundtable discussion. So this is a space that can be booked by yourself for meetings. If you have community partners that you want to have join for events or meetings, then this is a great space. We also have smaller rooms like study rooms, meeting rooms. If you want to bring in a postdoc fellow, if you have partners who are traveling here and they need office space, we have shared rooms for the postdoc fellow, also for visiting fellows. So this is something that Tubman can provide for you. And if you want to hire RAs, we also have a shared space for graduate students. If they need a space to work, then this is something that our ORU can offer. This is just a photo of all of the rooms. So I can send this out and folks can take a closer look at that. Oops. Oh, I realize. Okay. So in putting together your grant application, one of the major things that Tubman can provide support for is reviewing the budget that you have in your application. So if you have things like, put an example of hiring RAs or postdoc fellows or anyone really, we can help to kind of review the budget, just make sure that everything aligns with York's policies, making sure that the salaries and benefits are correct, making sure it's accurate for what you have outlined in your proposal, in your application. And then of course, if there are other budget related things that might be more specific to community engaged research. For example, I know we had a discussion where gift giving was brought up. So having that implemented into the budget and making sure that it aligns with York policies, but also is like appropriate for the funder, then that's something that we can help address and kind of talk about. And of course, the research officers and SIRI who will present next can also help with that as well. So we can work in collaboration to make sure that your budget and everything that you're proposing is sound. And then the post award, of course, we can also help with submitting payroll if you have RAs. So something that Shaliwa mentioned was amplifying your research and helping you out if you want participants, if you need amplification for events, then we have our newsletter and we have our Tubman platform, our website, that we can share any information you want. Of course, exciting news as well, any updates in your research, we're happy to share that as well to our Tubman community and beyond. And we've been able to support some folks pretty well in having like participants for conferences, for example, and getting calls for papers and those sort of things. So we have our platform that we can help amplify anything that you request. Okay, this is it. Like I said, it was a short presentation. The last thing I'll add is that outside of what I've mentioned in this presentation, Tubman is here to support you, to support your grant application, like throughout the whole process from beginning, developing it, thinking of ideas, what's feasible or not, all the way until the end, throughout the whole process of receiving the application and then paying out like honorariums, reimbursements. So any question, like come to us, and if we can't do it, then we'll find somebody who can do it for you. So yeah, this is our information here. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Priska, Research Officer at Glendon. My presentation aligns very well with Rebecca's because ultimately what we're here for is to support our researchers and make sure that they get all the resources necessary to pursue their research. So before we continue, just a little snippet about Glendon. We have about 102 faculty members, among which our members are also members of ORU, hence why we have that really nice interconnection of research happening. In size, Glendon is comparable to Mount Allison University and Bishop University. In York terms, we're the baby LNPS, I dare say, with a little bit of connection with science, health, and AMPD, and strong connections to education. Faculty and staff at Glendon are bilingual, so we are able to support in both English and French. So the overview of research services that we offer at Glendon align with all the faculties here at York. So it includes pre-award support, which is identifying internal and external funding opportunities, assisting the development of refining application, make sure that the application aligns with the guideline of a funding agency, provide budget planning. More eyes on the budget, the better, I think. And we work with SIRI, with ORU coordinators to help make refined and send that fully polished package to the funding agency. And we do much more than that, but the PowerPoint couldn't fit everything. So post-award support is facilitating and hiring research staff as well, offering event planning assistance, administrative support, preparing and financial reporting for ministries as well. Occasionally we are asked to help with that, and coordinating professional development where needed, because when you work at the university, you kind of have to learn the boring administrative stuff as well. And one of the most important things for us is to work with ORUs. We've worked with many members of Tubman and CIKL to secure grants with the help of SIRI. And so how can we help ORU researchers? We are able to share information, which is circulating internal and external funding opportunities. We help with grant development support. So basically how it works with faculty is our faculty researchers will receive our research office support in collaboration with the center coordinators. And from there, we'll be able to refine the budget and help get contribution letters and in the research proposal to ensure that the ORU contributions are properly highlighted. Communication support, we often share events that's happening throughout the ORUs with the Glendon community as well. And above all, partnerships and collaboration. Often researchers at Glendon are looking to collaborate with other members. We direct them to the various ORUs that we have at work, which I think are great and key resources to develop research. And one of the initiatives that we're looking to create or rather bring back is the research retreat, which is the research grant proposal that we often organize prior to COVID. And we are planning to pair it with a grant proposal pathway. So how it works is that with that, we're going to invite to promote collaboration and idea exchanges, along with creating a creative and friendly place to kickstart proposal writing. So at Glendon as well, we also have make available meeting rooms where we are able to do that. We do fun activities as part of a research retreat. We had yoga sessions, lunches, and so on to help us get in the mood to get the writing going. Yeah, so that's about it for me. So right now, in terms of this initiative, we have CIRLAC and the CRCC who are talking and collaborating. This discussion just happened in December, but we're looking to open this opportunity to everybody soon. I'm going to leave our contacts here. There. Anyways, thank you. To reach, don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you have any questions, asking to collaborate or help you connect with one of our researchers. Thank you, everyone. Merci.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. I may need more than 5 minutes. My presentation, I think, flows pretty well onto Priska's. Priska was talking about research services support. I'm going to give a high-level overview of all tri-agency programs in 10 minutes. So bear with me. I want to preface what I'm about to talk about today with the slides that I have here include hyperlinks to all the program websites. So I won't dwell too much on specific programs too much, but I will. You will be able to have this as a resource after this presentation. Everyone is registered today, and I hope it will be a helpful one to give you an easy way to access different types of resources to understand the tri-agency programs and see what works best for you, because as Deborah spoke about earlier today, the kind of research you do means that not just one, but maybe different kinds of programs, sometimes together, can make a lot of sense for the kind of work you're doing. So when we talk about tri-agency programs, there are 3 agencies: SSHRC, NSERC, and CIHR. CIHR really being also of itself a constellation of 13 different health institutes, each with their own specific mandates and a rich tapestry of applications and grant programs to understand. So, and the links to each of the agencies are here. They are governed by federal law that demarcates the mandate of the work they do. Primary human health, CIHR, research for scientific, natural sciences, engineering, NSERC, and of course, social sciences and humanities research for SSHRC. In the most recent budget, 1.8 billion is the budget over the next 5 years for the tri-agencies, and thereafter 750 million per year is the current commitment from the federal government. So these agencies are tasked with dispersing these funds in equitable, rigorous, peer-reviewed manner. I want to speak a bit about support for Indigenous researchers, of course. The tri-agencies have been very seized in recent years with reviewing how Indigenous research is defined, how it is evaluated, how researchers should be advised to conduct research, obviously because of the fraught history of how Indigenous research has been conducted, not only in Canada, but across the world, across time and space, in different cultures and different regions. You can read about the work of the agencies at the links I provided here in their new directions draft policy, as well as I provided links to how the agencies, each one, and there are subtle differences for each one because of the nature of the research done. At SSHRC, at NSERC, and CIHR, you can click the links here and read the detailed engagement of how each agency is tackling their efforts to improve, enhance, and facilitate authentic Indigenous research and collaboration. Also, a link here to the Institute for Indigenous Peoples' Health, which anyone doing work with Indigenous researchers and communities should be familiar with, and the opportunities and grant opportunities offered through that institute. Support for Black researchers, I want to highlight, because this was just recently launched earlier this week, the Undergraduate Student Researcher Award is an NSERC program. It's later on in the slide. But there's, starting last year or 2 years ago, there was an extra allocation of the agencies for SSHRC and CIHR USRAs, which are fund students full-time in the summer months as RAs at undergraduate level, to be allocated specifically for Black identifying undergraduate students. And there's an allocation of about 95, I believe, for CIHR and 90 for SSHRC. which is in addition to an allocation which each institution has for the NSERC Undergraduate Student Researcher Awards. It's an opportunity, I think, that's not fully well known, I think, among our colleagues, but think about it. This is something, if you're interested in, to reach out to your faculty research office to learn a bit more about. Also, Deborah spoke earlier about changes the agencies have been making around honoraria for Indigenous researchers. Similarly, the agencies are concerned with facilitating community-based research more broadly through its revisions and statements around EDI or DEDI, as we might prefer to say now, in the use of grant funds. So a link to that is here. I won't dwell on it. Suffice to say, the agencies are very much taking an expansive view towards giving researchers flexibility in defining community-based research assistance, facilitating support and compensation for them, and being, I think, very intentional in recognizing that research, especially community-based research, needs to have flexibility in understanding communities and engaging them authentically in their work. I also, and I hope Diana here will appreciate also, a link to the Partnerships Toolkit, which is SSHRC, and the different agencies have their own resources, but I think the SSHRC Partnerships Toolkit is an excellent starting point. If you're unsure about how to build a research partnership, especially in a Canadian research context, there are a lot of resources here, information sessions, guidance documents. Of course, research services in your faculty and centrally are here to help you as well. But for your own benefit, this is a resource I think that will be a good starting point for anyone looking to engage in Indigenous research broadly before you drill into specifics. Again, this is a reference slide, hyperlinks to all the core programs. For SSHRC, NSERC, and CIHR, I'll talk a bit more about these a bit later on in the presentation. But there's Insight Program, Partnership Program for SSHRC, as well as some smaller grants that are affiliated with those programs. Aid to Scholarly Journals will have its next intake this summer and runs every 3 years for those who have a leadership role in a scholarly journal as an editorial role. NSERC Discovery Grants support fundamental research. Alliance Grants are interesting opportunities for collaboration if you do work with natural sciences engineering with a societal benefit and you're working with Indigenous or other marginalized communities in Canada. And of course, in CIHR, there is the project grant, the main funding arm of the agency, but also a number of other opportunities that are offered within the agencies. I find the planning and dissemination grants, a link here, is a good sort of gateway into building a CIHR research program. For CIHR, they're relatively easy to get and can be a good way to build those collaborations at a start. And all CIHR grants are on a website named ResearchNet. So if you do work in health, that's something you need to bookmark and consult. Briefly, interdisciplinary research. Starting about 5-6 years ago, the agencies created a new program called the New Frontiers in Research Fund, which supports high risk, high reward, as they define it, interdisciplinary work that transcends the expertise of at least 2 of the 3 agencies. So an NSERC researcher, a SSHRC researcher, or CIHR, there are various combinations, working on a program that really requires that expertise from those 2 domains. And these can be partnered, these can be collaborative. They're $250,000, that includes $50,000 in overhead costs. And there's an exploration stream, there's a larger transformation stream, there are various special calls and international foci as well that make this an opportunity you should consider if you do that kind of work. Insight program, the main sort of bread and butter of most SSHRC researchers is the Insight grant. Insight development grants are early stage research, typically pilot studies, early phases of longer initiatives, 2-year maximum up to $75K. Insight grants are the main grants up to 5 years. There are 2 streams, one capped at $100,000, the other one $100,000 to $400,000 that fund basic research in the social sciences and humanities. There are knowledge synthesis grants, which are offered sort of as one-off type of grants. They're basically, I often describe them as really advanced forms of literature review, with usually a report or a presentation in Ottawa as the capstone of those projects, and are a great way to deal with work that isn't about doing original research, but synthesizing work in a particular thematic area. And we've seen in recent years the agencies focusing on Indigenous and Black and other marginalized community themes, both within Canada and internationally, to be the focus of knowledge synthesis. And these do not require partnered funds. They are sole grants that can leverage external funds, but don't have to. Connection grants, partnership, engage, partnership development, partnership grant. One slide does not maybe do justice to the complexity and size of these programs, but nevertheless, briefly, if you think of these as a constellation going from small to large, there's different kinds of ways to bring collaborations together. A connection grant is for knowledge mobilization. Sharing research has already been done and building those connections as implied in the title. And requires some matching support. You speak with your faculty research office and the Office of Research Services about options for that. Partnership Engage is the first stage, you might think of it as the partnership program. A sort of low risk, high reward, small grant requires one eligible organization. Partnership development is the next level, $200K. More than one is typical, 3 to 5 on average, generally speaking. 1 to 3 years, and of course the partnership grant, which is the largest program that you can apply for in SHRC, up to $2.5 million. This slide is just a framework for that's SHRC specific, but is one that I think is editable or changeable to different scenarios depending on what kind of work you do. Many people will start with an engage or a connection. They will build that into leading into a PDG, and then build that into a SHRC PG. But these are not requirements in the SHRC program. You could have a different grant that could be the basis of the work you're doing, and then lead that into a PG, like an IDRC or an NFIRF grant, or even some other program or project, maybe even from some other agency. So the point of this framework is to give you an idea of just how you can think strategically about how not just this grant, this time, but what do I want to accomplish over the next 5 or 10 or even 15 years in the long term? Because work sometimes is slow, as Professor Pepler has highlighted, especially working with our partners and communities. What makes the most sense? And if a big grant isn't right now, what are the options that we can look at to sort of get us to that point? I am almost done. NSERC discovery grants. Not a lot of experience in my faculty, LA and PS, where I'm the director in terms of these with Indigenous or Black communities, but Alliance Society is a grant opportunity that if you do work with NSERC-focused researchers, that's potentially a good flexible option because it does not require a cash match from programs, and it can also provide a project that leads to societal outcomes as a primary focus rather than new technology or R&D, which is more typical for NSERC. And finally, CIHR, project grants. There's a $650 million envelope for CIHR grants this cycle. In the next intake, the spring intake for project grants, there's $14.5 million as an envelope for Indigenous health-focused grants. So if you are doing Indigenous health-focused research, that's fundamental human health. There's an envelope for that, and a very detailed peer review process the agencies are setting up to work within that framework. Of course, CIHR offers various team grants, operating grants, catalyst grants. And I can't really talk about them because they're very sui generis. They're very sort of unique to mandates or calls. That's why you need to get onto ResearchNet and sort of see what's upcoming as well as what's current, and then see what makes the most sense for you in your program. This is just a brief overview. I won't dwell too much on these opportunities, but these are federal, provincial, non-tri-agency. I know I've been talking about the tri-agencies, but there are a lot of opportunities in federal, provincial programs, other types of international programs where people who do work with Indigenous communities, often global in scope, may want to look at opportunities. especially as we come towards the end of a fiscal year, potentially an election year. We may see more of these opportunities rolling out, potentially to the benefit of people on this call. And we do lots of work. In my faculty, we have lots of work and experience with Global Affairs Canada, Women and Gender Equality, Employment and Social Development Canada, ISED, IDRC, Indigenous Northern Affairs, of course. Horizon Europe emerged as a new opportunity for collaboration development as well. Different opportunities and foundations exist to support collaborative work. Also, for those of you working with postdoctoral fellows and are looking at postdoctoral fellowship opportunities, the FGS website, I have a link here for it, is a great resource to see what kind of opportunities there are to hire and recruit and fund postdocs. So your faculty supports are your Associate Dean Principal Research, as we heard in the previous presentation. Faculty research offices support grant development and administration, as well as internal grant programs, many, of course, supporting Indigenous and Black researchers, certainly in my faculty. The Office of Research Services, we'll hear a bit more about them from colleagues shortly, but there's a subscription that you can apply for to get research announcements, and of course, resources and contacts, link here at the Research Commons page. Thank you very much.
Which one moves us forward? Okay, so thank you. I'm Abby Vogus. I'm one of the SIRI specialists. SIRI, another fun acronym, but it stands for the Strategic and Institutional Research Initiatives Team. SIRI is the easy way to say it. Our team comes in, my colleague Diana is here. She'll talk a little bit more specifically about some of the larger programs that David kind of mentioned here. But most of the grants that you apply for, you'll work directly with your faculty research officers, the ORUs, and then within the Office of Research Services, you would be supported by, I call them the grants team. Many of you may not actually interact directly with them, but your research officers interact with them quite frequently. For programs that SIRI supports, these are your really big, large scale grants. We don't do as many grant applications, but we provide a lot of hands-on support for developing those applications. We kind of think of ourselves as providing a bit of concierge sort of service to your grant application, kind of whatever you need, we figure out how to get it done. We work very closely with your faculty research offices and with ORUs because they are often very involved in these large scale grants. So one of the questions you are probably asking is, how do I know if this is a SIRI grant? We do have sort of a specific mandate for when it comes to the SIRI team. Usually it's if the institution, like York University, is the applicant, and that might happen when we have a specific envelope of money for those applications. For example, Canada Foundation for Innovation, we get a certain amount of money, then we have to apply for it to show we're good enough. Those are usually large scale infrastructure grants, for example. If it's a very large grant, usually our threshold is $1 million. So if you're applying for something that's over $1 million, you're probably going to come and work with somebody from our team to do that. If the institution can only submit one application. For example, David mentioned IDRC, or the International Development Research Center. Often those calls, you can only submit one application as an institution. And again, the institution is technically the applicant, and those calls would come to our team. If it's a nomination for an award or a prize and you want the president to nominate you, or the vice president research and innovation, or the VPRI, those things come to our team. And sometimes if there's going to take significant resources from the university to apply for the application, it comes through our team because we help coordinate that at an institutional level. And every once in a while, just for some reason, it comes to our team, just because, usually because there's a certain reason we might limit the number of applications that go forward, or maybe it's a little bit more complicated than we had hoped. And if you're not sure, usually in the calls that go out from the university, it will say who the specialist, if it's the SIRI team, who you should get in contact with, or always ask your faculty research officer because they will direct you where to go. They're usually pretty well informed about where the call needs to go through. Because of the size and I don't want to say importance, but the size and mostly the size, the limit and the complication of the applications, we also usually have a peer review process for most of the applications that we do. We have 2 committees that support that. You will hear this more acronyms thrown around. I call them the MAC and the Sport Committee. I have to check what SPORT is. SPORT is the Strategic Projects and Opportunity Review Team. Yeah, I looked, David, but so, and then the MAC team stands for the Major Awards Advisory Committee. So as the MAC name indicates, that usually provides feedback on awards and nominations. So for example, if you do apply for something like Royal Society or like a Killam Prize, that goes to the Major Award Advisory Committee. The Sport Committee focuses more on the grants, and then like Canada Research Chairs. So they do more of the grant reviews. These committees will most of the time, they're providing you strategic feedback. So when you do go through this committee, please provide a strong draft because you will get better feedback the stronger it is. But whenever we have to, at an institutional level, restrict how many nominations can go forward or how many applications can go forward, these are usually the committees that make the recommendation. They're made up of your peers across the university, usually people who have won similar awards or grants that for what they're reviewing. So it's actually very, very useful to have for these types of grants, which, you know, we are investing a lot of time in preparing. So this is a general overview of the programs that we normally support. The things that are bolded, we describe those as, the things that have the asterisk next to them, we describe them as SIRI light support. That means we don't develop the files as much. We're more kind of doing an administrative process. Probably the one that most people are familiar with that has that is the Ontario Early Researcher Award. We get a lot of applications for that, but our team doesn't really develop the file. The faculty is in charge of that. The things that are bolded are things that I would say early and mid-career folks tend to apply to a little bit more. They're open more to them. And I'm going to turn this over to Diana because she's going to go into details on some of these specific grants.
I don't really have any pockets. Clicker, I need the clicker too, please. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Diana. I work with Abby and the SIRI team. There's actually 5 of us on the SIRI team. Oh, I guess we'll see on the next slide. But so Abby does mostly awards and nominations. I support primarily the SHRC partnership grants. Maheen will do mostly the CFI, ORF. And then we have Mark, who is our director, and Pina, who is our admin person. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about partnered research funding opportunities. So these were highlighted on the screen before, and I put them here because having partners is essential for these programs. So we have the IDRC, the International Development Research Center, Global Affairs Canada, NFRF. Abby, remind me of that acronym again. There we go. And the SHRC Partnership Grant. And I've broken them up into kind of 2 categories. So the first 3, they'll often come up as directed calls. So there's a specific theme or topic that they want addressed. They're often focused on working with other countries, the low to middle income countries, LMICs, or European countries. And they often address global challenges or climate goals, something very specific. And then our NFRF and so NRF International is the one that our team would handle, and the SSHRC partnership grants. Those are our cyclical calls. So every year we have a specific time when they're due, whereas the IDRC and the Global Affairs Canada's, sometimes they'll just pop up out of nowhere and you have 2 weeks to pull together an application. And that's why it's very important to have your partnerships established and the communities that you work with, because particularly for the first 3, you have to hit the ground running. You have very little time to put together an application, which means your partnerships, your relationships, they need to be established. For the SSHRC partnership grant, that is more of a kind of an, we'll say, open call, in that you propose the research that you're working on. Who are the partnerships? What is the overarching aim or goal of the partnership? What are you going to achieve with your group of partners or your communities that you're working with? The reason why I have an asterisk there is because sometimes there are directed calls. So in the past, SSHRC partnered with the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and they developed 2 different kind of partnership grants. It was the SSHRC PG Collaborative Housing Research Network, and then there was the SSHRC PG National Housing Strategy. And then more recently, SSHRC partnered with the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. And then there was the Reconciliation Network in response to call to Action 65, which we got one of them, which is amazing. It wasn't quite a SSHRC partnership grant, but very similar. And these are also large-scale grants. And then I was just going to spend a few minutes going over the SSHRC partnership grant. So in terms of timeline, there's the career path, the York PG timeline, the partnership timeline. So as my colleagues have mentioned, it's not the grant that you jump into right out of the gate. You don't have to have, as David mentioned, so there's a nice progression of, you might start off with some of the smaller SSHRC grants, move into a PDG, that leads to a PG. You don't have to have that progression, but like I said, it's not a grant that it's not the first thing you apply for when you start. And that's because you need to develop partnerships. You need to, and Deb mentioned this as well, it takes time to really develop them, to nourish them, to make sure they're genuine and they're involved in the process. In terms of the York PG timeline, or the SSHRC timeline as well, it's pretty long. So it's almost a 2-year process. So we launch it in the summer. We run kind of our own internal process. Late fall, so usually end of November, you would submit your full NOI. And that would go to sport. And so sport was initially a group of your peers at York. And then we discovered that it made more sense to have subcommittees because they could better evaluate the program. So we have a SSHRC partnership grant subcommittee, and it's made up of people who've had SSHRC partnership grants, who've sat on the adjudication committees at SSHRC, who have different levels of expertise, and they provide such valuable feedback to strengthen the file. So we don't limit, because there's no limit on how many PGs can go through, but they provide such great feedback. And as Abby mentioned, the more complete and stronger the submission you get, the better feedback you're going to get. And then you have, and it's a 2-stage process. So in February, your stage 1 application is submitted. If invited, your stage 2 application is due the following fall. And then a few months later, you have an expert panel report to respond to. And then the following spring, you would find out whether or not you got that fund. So it's almost a 2-year process. It's very long. It's very time and resource intensive. Some of our faculty members have said they wish they had course release just to write the partnership grant. And there's a lot of moving parts, and coordinating your partners is a big part of that. They have letters of support they need to write. In order to be considered a partner for a partnership grant, you have to be committing cash or in-kind contributions, because there is a 35% match that is required for this. So if you apply for the full $2.5 million, it's $875,000, which can be cash or in-kind. But getting back to the point of having these relationships with your partners, you wouldn't ask someone you just met for money. You have to have this established relationship to say, okay, if we're gonna do this, if we're gonna whatever the objective is of your partnership, we need resources to be able to do this, and you need to show investment. And one of the things this shows for the SSHRC Partnership Grant that everyone is evaluated on is the genuineness of the partnership. How invested are they? And if your community organizations can only give in kind, that's fine, because there is no ratio as to how much cash or in kind SSHRC expects. It can be mostly in kind. That's completely fine. But there's different ways that the genuineness of the partnership will be evaluated. So it's through these partner letters. They don't want to see kind of these templates that people might send out. They want to see genuine letters of how invested they are in this partnership, what it'll mean to them, how they will benefit from them. Involvements in the governance of the partnership grant, what role they will play, how will they guide this partnership. Weaved throughout the application in all sections. And then if you're invited to stage 2, there's evidence of formal partnership, where they'll be signing an MOU or a collaborative agreement. We've already talked about matching. And then with respect to adjudication, so there's different committees that it'll go to. At stage 1, it's just a multidisciplinary committee. But at stage 2, it goes to an expert panel review who will provide a report for the multidisciplinary committee. There's merit review that all of the reviewers need to follow, some guidelines. I think David provided some links to that. And then if the research you're doing, there's a section on the application where you indicate whether it's Indigenous research. And again, David provided some great links to where you could look at if it falls within those categories. That would be indicated to the committee, and there's guidelines for merit review of Indigenous research. So in some of the other SSHRC programs, it would go to its own separate Indigenous review committee, but for the PG, it doesn't. They would follow the guidelines for merit review of Indigenous research and keep that those guidelines in mind while they're doing their merit review and following the evaluation criteria. So I'll stop there in case there's other questions about the SSHRC Partnership Grant, but those are the kind of the big details, we'll say. In terms of who to reach out to SIRI if you have any questions. So I've already mentioned we have Pina, our SIRI administrator, myself, Maheen, Abby, and Mark. We also have a YU link page that you can go to see what we do. You have to be logged in to see it. But yeah, you can find more information there. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hadra Marwali. I'm the Operations Manager of Research Commons. Our director, Luann, is very sorry that she couldn't be here. She's not feeling well. Okay. Okay, so what is Research Commons? So you can think of Research Commons as like the front door to research. We're the first stop on your research journey at York. In case you have any questions about where to go, we can help direct you. So we are the faculty-facing interface of the VPRI, and we are here to help you build your program of research and here to help you become stronger researchers. So we provide 3 main services. We help provide information about what's available at the university. So we are like the gateway between the services and the faculty members. And we provide, in terms of our own services, research education through expert-led workshops. So we hold workshops throughout the year. And we also have a grant proposal support program called Research GPS. And that complements not just faculty level services, but all the services you've heard about today. So if you're I know this has been a lot of information today. If you're maybe even unclear what the faculty level support is versus central support, just kind of how the university is structured, we're here to help you understand all of that. And our team, we are overseen by Jennifer Steeves, who's the Associate Vice President of Research in the VPRI. Our academic director is Luann Good-Gingrich, and myself, the Operations Manager. I don't know if it's gonna work. Thank you. Okay. Did it skip a slide maybe? Yes, okay. So I talked about communicating what is available across the university. So we can help to navigate you. If you're not sure where to go, we're here to help you out. On our website, we have 3 web pages that might be the most useful to you that I've pulled here. The first is the Research Support Services webpage, which we put together recently after we held our new faculty research orientation last year. So here's just like a screenshot from that website. So all of the services that are available across the university, we've divided into pre-award support and post-award support, although some services are kind of helping across the research life cycle. So if you're at maybe the phase of your research where you're receiving your funding and you're ready to start spending it, but you don't know where to go, you can find out here who the appropriate offices are and who the contacts are. We also recently put together a webpage on faculty level support for international research collaborations. And we also have a webpage on all the contacts for the faculty research officers. So if you're not sure who your faculty research officer is, you can visit that webpage. And then for our research workshops that we hold throughout the year, so they're typically held from September to July. Most of them are virtual, but we do hold some that are in person. And we advertise all of our workshops on our website and over email. So we do have a listserv that is quite comprehensive. It has almost all of the faculty members in the university as well as research staff. But if you're not on our listserv and you want to start getting our emails, you can sign up on our mailing list. And our workshops differ every single year. We do have some that repeat, but the topics can range from preparing a strong funding proposal, building a research team, navigating IP and copyright issues, and knowledge mobilization and increasing your research visibility. So those are just a few of the topics that we cover. And then every spring and summer, typically starting like June, July, and then we'll have some in the fall as well. We have funding grant information sessions for the Tri-Council grants for those that we support in our grant proposal support program. And those are led by research officers who we collaborate with. And we always have researchers that have been successful with those grants who speak, as well as researchers who have sat on the grant adjudication committee. And in the summer, we hold our new faculty research orientation. Last year, it was delayed a little bit and we held it in the fall, but we are hoping to hold it this year in July, and possibly opening it up to all faculty, not just new faculty. So we're looking forward to that this year. And all of our workshops are recorded and posted on our website. So if there's anything you want to watch, there's an archive on our website. So I have put here just some upcoming workshops that I thought might be interesting to this group. We have much more than this, so you can visit our website to see what else there is. But there's just a few I wanted to highlight. So next week, we have a workshop on knowledge mobilization, which Deborah is going to be speaking at. We're very excited. And the following week, we have 2 workshops. The first is on building your research dream team. And that one is kind of a more practical workshop on how to actually hire a student, knowing the differences between RAs and GAs, what like undergrad positions are available. And then that same week, we also have, or sorry, there's another one the next week on IP for STEM researchers. But then in March, we have a workshop that we're very excited about on planning your funded program of research. And this one, you'll have a chance to hear from 2 associate deans of research, one from the STEM side and one from social sciences and humanities, on touching on kind of what David and the SIRI team have been talking about how to progress your research. And so they'll be giving their personal stories of what they have done in terms of like the grants that they started out with and what they were thinking for future grants and how they were kind of looking forward when they're doing their research and not just focusing on the grant that they're applying for now. And you'll also hear from 2 researchers from 2 different faculties. So it'll give you a sense of how people are thinking about their entire program of research and maybe mistakes that they've made that you can kind of learn from. And then in April, we're also very excited. We have a community engaged research workshop series where we're working with the TD Community Engagement Center on 2 workshops. So the first one is April 2nd, and it's called Laying the Groundwork for Community Impact. So you'll have a chance to hear from staff members at the Community Engagement Center who are really like the experts in community engaged research. And they've developed so many incredible resources for best practices for community engaged research. And so they'll go over that in that workshop. And then in mid-April, we'll have part 2 of that series on activating community research, where you'll have a chance to hear from members of the community who have collaborated with researchers at York, as well as York researchers who have collaborated with the community. And you'll have a chance to hear what has worked and not worked for them. Okay, so that's our workshops. The other service that we offer is Research GPS, which is our grant proposal support program. So this is open to all York researchers. And like I said, it's grant proposal support that complements faculty level support and central support. So you work with your faculty research officers and you get paired with a grant proposal support specialist who's an external grant writer or editor that is hired to work on you one-on-one on your grant application. And then you submit a draft of your application to 2 peer reviewers, which a lot of researchers who have been part of GPS say that that is one of the most beneficial aspects of the program for them, to get feedback from peers. So we offer 20 hours of consultation time with a GPS specialist, and the cost of that is fully covered. And the program is designed for new grant applicants or resubmissions. And we really do stress the importance of resubmitting your grant because a lot of people are successful the 2nd or 3rd, maybe even 4th time. So it's really trying to, you know, encourage you not to give up after that first time. So just a little bit more on Research GPS. You can just scroll down. So I'm just going to give just like a brief overview of what we've done this past year. So we had 2 sessions. We hope to do the same thing again. So our summer 2025 session would begin in May, and that would be for the fall 2025 grant deadlines, where we'd support the PDG, the SHRC IG, CIHR project grant, the NSERC Discovery Grant. And then we'll have another session of GPS in the fall, which would begin in August, and that's for the spring 2026 grant deadlines, which seems extremely far away right now. But that would be for the IDG Project Grant Alliance grant. And we do give priority to certain researchers. So we really try to target early career researchers, researchers who are transitioning to mid-career, researchers who have not held a Tri-Council grant in 5 years or more, or researchers who are submitting to a Tri-Council for the first time ever. So even if you're not early career researcher, but you've never submitted to a grant, you're part of one of our priority groups. And if you don't fit any of the priority criteria, you can still participate in the program. And it would be part of a cost recovery program where you pay for the specialist, just because our funds are limited to our, our priority groups. Okay. And yeah, that's kind of all I have. So we hope that you stay connected with us. Please visit our website. We're always updating it, and we are working to continue developing it and updating, especially our webpage of services that are available across the university, because we really want to help navigate everyone as best as we can. If you want to register for any upcoming workshops, you can also stay tuned for registration to open for Research GPS. And if you want to contact us, we have our general inbox, and then those are just the emails for me and Luann.
All right, thank you, everyone. We will now open it up for Q&A. So if anybody on Zoom or anyone in person has, likely on Zoom, have any questions, I'm not even in camera. Hi. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to either raise your hand, unmute, and folks in person, we can all help in addressing it. Does anyone in person have any comments?
Thank you so much. This has been like so sort of applying for grants. And one of the questions that always comes back to me, right, is where do you start? And you've presented sort of a smorgasbord of different possibilities, some that are within the tri-agency, some that are beyond the tri-agency. And I wonder, like, if you were to give advice to a researcher who's maybe early or just approaching mid-career, who's never held a grant before, and is maybe Indigenous or Black, right? Where do they start? Where do they begin this process? And I guess that's addressed to the whole room of people, but if there's anybody who has that particular insight, it would be very informative.
So my best advice for somebody sort of starting off would be talk to your mentor if you have one. If you don't, find somebody who you wish was your mentor, and then you can usually find somebody's CV online, kind of look at what have they done, what was their career progress, like where did they start, how did they get started on their what was the first grant application. Talk to them, kind of, they'll know talk to a mentor, they'll kind of know your field, what you want to do. And then your next stop, I would say, is probably with your faculty research officer to help you kind of think through, okay, if that's what you want to do, or your research, organized research unit, but they can help you think through your timeline and like when you need to get started, because oftentimes the timeline is a lot longer than you think it is to actually prepare a grant application. You know, most people spend at least 3 months preparing at a minimum. I would say 3 months. I know for us, we don't like anybody to come near us if they have a 3-month deadline because of the grants that we work on. So I think it's really important to have a sense of who does the kind of research that you want to be doing and kind of what was their path. It's not that you can't create your own, but that's usually a good place to start and start getting familiar with what's out there.
I think that's a great place to start with a mentor. If I look back at my CV, I started with such small grants, $10,000 or $8,000, because it's a long runway. You're in it for the long term, and you're thinking about, where are my curiosities? How am I going to articulate the real interest that I have? And how could I ever do that? And I have found over the course of my career that it's been so helpful to have a community collaborator, to do this kind of community engaged research, because I have questions, but my questions aren't as real and as present as the questions of those who work every day, trying to address and overcome the problems that people face. And so for me, it's been so exciting to embed my research in a context. And it's so exciting for lots of reasons. One is they have the right questions to ask. Two is they usually have processes of data collection, and they have participants that I wouldn't be able to engage otherwise. So for 30 years, I've worked with Breaking the Cycle, which is a program for substance using women and their young children. There's not a chance I could find that population without being in a community-led center. Also, I ran a network of centers of excellence, and in that, we had to think about what channels our knowledge could go through. And when you have partners, they pull for the knowledge that you're co-creating with them. And so they can send that knowledge back out through their channels. So I think start small and think whether there's any organization in the city or the country that's doing some of the work that you want to inform and learn from, because it's always a bidirectional process. So that would be my answer.
Thank you very much for that answer. I am going to start by saying one of the things I like to encourage, especially for our students, start applying for grants while you're a student. I find that grants beget more grants. If I sit on adjudicating committees and it just looks like, the more someone has, you can trust them with your money. It's almost like getting work experience. So even when you like as undergrad students, as grad students, start, and I like that when we're looking through, whose slides was it? It had given something for undergrad students. And so that gave me an idea of what to tell our students as well at Tubman. It's start applying early, but also start with something, start anywhere, start small. You get a 5,000 grant today, could lead to a 10,000 grant tomorrow, could lead to, it's in the progression of the grants that we saw, the partnership development grants, starts from somewhere. It's maybe you start with a 25,000 and then next thing you're going to 75,000. So it's just starting somewhere. When you're in the right community and you meet the right people, you've spoken to your mentors, you've spoken with your department, the research team at the department. I find that the research team at LAFS is amazing. So speak with them. And then you start to get ideas of where to go, but start somewhere. It may seem overwhelming, but until you step forward, until you put a step forward, until you start somewhere, it's very hard. So start somewhere, and then the template that you had from the first one builds up for the next one, and then the next, and again, like you said, you're in it for the long haul. So just start somewhere.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Shalewa. Sorry, I can't be with you in person, but I just wanted to add on to the last couple of comments and underscore that how important all of those suggestions are in terms of mentorship and relationships and starting small and starting when you're a graduate student or even an undergraduate student. And I think that what I wanted to emphasize is the importance of relationships. So this is community engaged research we're talking about in the context of a university, but a lot of us are involved in different communities. And so it's about treating those relationships with respect, treating our collaborators and participants with respect, co-researchers. And then, it doesn't take a lot of money to hold a workshop for a day on a Saturday. And, as a previous speaker was saying, like work out the agenda for what the most important questions that your partners and you would like to ask, or what are some of the most important issues or problems that people are looking for more insight, because oftentimes our research partners, they have a ton of data, but they don't have time to analyze it or figure out how that's going to feed back into their service provision or feed back into their policy demands or feed back into
some advocacy, right? So if that's something that's of interest to you, you can hold a workshop with $5,000 from your faculty research funds, and then apply for a connection grant to have a workshop where you might bring other people to help develop those ideas and develop the grant writing. Because I think the other thing is that and I learned this from scholars doing work in Indigenous communities, is that, again, you have to treat their time. The folks they're not, tenure stream faculty who have a salary. They're taking their time to develop that and deal with all of the mayhem that is a SSHRC online application, right? So it's better if we can support that their time and pay for their time to come together and write the grant together and support them in accessing the SSHRC grant and things like that. So that's just a few comments I wanted to add, and I'm sorry if there are things that have been already mentioned earlier.
I don't have a lot to add to the excellent points being made by my colleagues here, other than just to emphasize, if you're building collaboration, especially with an Indigenous community, that takes time. And one of the traps, often well-intentioned, of course, but it's still a fundamental trap that you can make as someone building a collaboration like this, is you see a grant requires collaboration with the community. You say, oh, I need to have an Indigenous co-applicant. I need to have an Indigenous researcher on my team. And then you can risk tokenizing your colleagues by doing this kind of work. You want to understand, and I think it's important to understand, that building these relationships takes time. And the partnerships, and Diana made this point, I think, quite well, partnerships need to be developed even as their development grants. You need to have collaborations in place. The formal partnership for a grant may be new, but the relationships leading up to that take time. So if you're seeing opportunities there, I really want to work with Indigenous communities, this grant looks great, remember, take the time to build those collaborations. And if you're unsure how to do it, speak with your associate dean, speak with your colleagues who have experience doing this work, and see what makes the most sense and what is achievable for those opportunities. Because even if the opportunity you're thinking of right now, there's not enough time, it's not the right fit, there will be others. Here in Canada, the reality is there's robust funding and support that our government, regardless of what government is in charge, has and will continue to commit to supporting Indigenous research. So build your collaborations first is my advice, and understand that can take time. It can take a lot of time. And it's iterative, it's conversational, and we and staff and colleagues can help, but no one can force collaboration on others. And telling an Indigenous elder, like, I have a deadline for SSHRC on February the 2nd in a month, this is not how this kind of work should be done. I mean, I think that's obvious to most people, or I think everyone on this call, but it's worth reiterating. Don't underestimate the time it takes to build these collaborations. And not just only for Indigenous communities, but any sort of communities, international partnerships in the global south. We have researchers doing all kinds of work that's community-based and engaged. And the same issues come up. And the agencies are sensitive to this as well, and do not want to be seen as having their programs encouraging actions that could be perceived as tokenizing. So that's sort of my general advice to add to these points.
Annie, bonjour. Thank you so much for these wonderful presentations. My name is Home. I'm a new student, new PhD student first year for the Health Policy and Equity program. For my research, for my upcoming research about the cultural reset dementia care for the Indigenous older adults in Toronto. That's my focus. And before that, I already did my master's research about the traditional healing and medicine in dementia care for indigenous populations in North America, Australia, and New Zealand. It was a systematic scoping review, but I was also engaged with the elders and the knowledge holders in the Northern Ontario to conduct a stakeholder consultation meeting to present my results, and they reviewed my results, and I proposed some the models for the dementia care models, and they really they like that, and they valued it, and they adapted, and they support it. So because as a result, I am also able to publish my paper about this research and the Alzheimer's and dementia journals. So as a new students, I would like to explore, is there any, the mentors so I can connect? That is the first one. And also I need to help, to develop my research proposals about the culturally safe dementia care for indigenous older adults and home and community care, as well as adult day programs in Toronto. Thank you so much.
First of all, congratulations on doing your PhD. That's so amazing. Also, congratulations on getting the privilege to work with Indigenous peoples on your research. I was a PhD student here at York University, and I got the opportunity to live in an Indigenous community for 5 years to do my research. It's really hard. And there's lots of work that you have to do to be able to engage with Indigenous peoples. It's lots of community building, it's lots of coffee, it's lots of cooking, it's lots of interacting, it's all of those things, right? And I think that if I was to say, in terms of so you asked two questions. The first one is about mentorship, right? And the second one is about establishing sort of community connections and relationships. And I think those are kind of actually in Indigenous communities often the same step. So the people who supported me most strongly in my research weren't other researchers per se that we define in terms of our sort of academic knowledge. They were people who were from the Indigenous community, who were language speakers, who were knowledge keepers, who had no formal recognized university degree, but they could read a scientific article, they could read a chapter that I drafted. I could have a conversation with them about research findings and research results, and they often provided the most precise, interesting, creative, knowledgeable critiques and feedbacks on my work. And so what I would say is find that one Indigenous person who you have a good rapport with, you have a good relationship, maintain and develop that relationship over the course of your career. And really ask them for guidance, and ask them for advice. I think it's good to ask people here this question, but I think if you find that one Indigenous person that maybe you've already connected with during your master's and are able to sort of reach out to them and say, hey, I'm looking to do this research, what would you say about this? I think is a really good one. The other thing that I would say is that there's a lot of Indigenous faculty at York. I think we have 23 Indigenous faculty at York. The Harriet Tubman Center has I think 108 faculty members. So it's a little bit bigger, right? But I would say that both Indigenous and Black faculty at York are overwhelmed. Just absolutely overwhelmed and don't have the capacity necessarily to supervise students, but also to mentor students that they're not even supervising, right? It's overwhelming. So what I would say is find those allies, find those sort of engaged scholars that are working with Indigenous communities that maybe are not from an equity seeking group that have a little bit more capacity, and reach out to them and ask them how they've done it. And I would say that's true both for sort of you at your stage, right? But also for other scholars. Lots of people reach out to the center where I was working, lots of non-Indigenous scholars, to ask, how can I get a partnership grant, right? And they're like, can I speak to this Indigenous researcher? Can I speak to this Indigenous researcher? And it's like, you have to tell them, They don't have the capacity to help you with your partnership grant application. White lady? No, just kidding. But here is an academic who has done research with an Indigenous partner organization before. I think they'd be willing to have a conversation with you. Or maybe, hey, I'm a settler ally, but I can jump on a Zoom call with you and tell you how I did it, right? So I think both for Indigenous academics who are overwhelmed, Black academics are overwhelmed, there's room for settler allies to also intervene and provide advice and provide engagement and expertise. And if you have those relationships already, work to cultivate and develop them. Anybody?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That concludes the event today. I'd like to just give a shout out to CIKL, Research Comments, SIRI, Prissa, David for attending, taking the time out of your day, presenting and responding to these important questions and these important conversations. And this will help our researchers really move forward with their research and their ideas. So thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.